Today we're going to talk about how to create a custom design in Design Space. Pretty exciting. Not only that, we're also going to talk about how to use shapes, text, layers, actions to design and assemble more complex structures. What I'm going to do right now is turn it over to our wonderful instructor. I will be back with you shortly. And let me introduce you to Kesley. She has some exciting things to share with you. Kesley, it's on you.
Thanks, Suzette, so much. Welcome, everybody. The way that we've structured the class is to begin with the slide presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we'll go ahead and jump right into the slides and start working from the beginning. Now, in the 101 class, we walked through Design Space and gave you an overview of Design Space. And today we're going to do a deeper dive into some of the actions and the layers panel and how you use those to manipulate designs. So let's get started. If you're on a tablet device, this is what your canvas will look like. I'll be working on a desktop device, but when I talk about things like actions or layers or edit tools, everything for you will be on the bottom of your canvas. And if you're working on a desktop or a laptop, we'll be working on the right side with the layers and the action items down here at the bottom. So everything, there'll be two features that are not on a tablet device that are on a desktop device, and I'll show you both ways on how to get the effect, whether you're on a desktop or a mobile device. So let's talk about layers. Layers are the layers panel. This is where all the action happens. So as you add elements to your canvas, whether it's a shape or text or an image, they start to stack up in the layers panel here. Now, as you look at your layers panel and as you add more layers to your canvas, you'll notice that you get more layers stacking on top of each other and things sort of come to life. So in your layers panel, along the top are a few icons I want to touch on for you. The first one being grouping. Now, when you group multiple layers together, what you're doing is you're saying, you're sort of sticking them in a file. So they go in the file and you label the file and you can move all of those images together and you can resize them together and you can ungroup those layers. So when you've grouped layers, you can ungroup them. It is not permanent. It's just a kind of a nice way to sort of say, okay, compartmentalize. These go together over here. That's what the grouping and ungrouping does. And then you have the next icon over, my mouse disappeared, is the duplicate icon here. So when you want to duplicate a layer, you just highlight that layer and it becomes the darker gray color. And then you click duplicate and it'll repeat that layer. Or if you want to delete a layer, you can delete your layer right here. So you highlight your layer and you delete it. Also on your layers panel is the eye. When you click the eye, the layer hides. So it doesn't go away. It's not deleted. You can bring it back at any time by clicking on the eye again. If you're on a if you're on a mobile device, when you click on the layer, your eye will show up down at the bottom here, and you just click on the eye down here instead of on each individual layer. So the eyeball hides the layer. It does not delete it. It's still there. On the bottom down here, when you have layers on your canvas and they're activated, on the bottom, these action items light up. So when you have two layers that you've selected, you can slice those two layers. When you have two or more layers selected, you can weld those layers. Two or more layers, attach or flatten and contour. So we're going to go through each one. That's the overview of what's at the bottom of your layers panel on your desktop. or in the Actions tab on a tablet. Oh, I forgot my little arrows. Okay, so the first one, what is slice? Slice cuts one shape from another shape or deletes part of an image. So to activate slice, you have to select two layers. So I selected the square and the circle layer, and the one image is overlapping the other image. So my circle is overlapping the square. When my layers are in a position like this, I can use the slice action icon. And what that does when I select slice is it takes a bite, if you will, and it slices those shapes apart. So on my initial, on the left side here, where I have the square and the circle, when I highlight both of those layers, when both of those layers are selected, and I say slice, it takes the part where the green circle is overlapping into the square and cuts it. Now they're right next to each other, so I did have to move these apart for this image, but that's what happens when you have images that are overlapping by edges and pieces. It'll slice like that. And you can see in my layers panel, I now have 4 layers from what started off as 2. Then you can also get a cookie cutter effect when you slice by stacking one image on top of another image and hitting and selecting both of those layers and selecting slice. You get the bottom layer now has the top layer cut out of it completely. So now I went from a square and a star to a square with a heart cut out of it, a star and a star. So slice, you can play around with it a little bit, but just keep in mind that you do need to have 2 layers selected, and they do need to be overlapping or touching. So either fully overlapping or just a little bit if you want to take a slice out, like a pizza slice. So the next action item is weld. And if you notice down here on my action items, you'll see that slice is not highlighted. So when I have 3 shapes selected, I can't slice all 3 at the same time. So you can only slice with 2 pieces, but weld you can slice with multiple layers. So when you weld something together, it removes overlapping cut lines by joining those multiple layers into a single layer. So if you look at my layers panel over here, my heart is, the bigger heart is my top heart. I have the pink heart on the left here, and the big heart overlaps into that pink heart. Now, if I were to send it to the machine to cut right now, it would cut 3 different hearts. So if I want to cut these as one heart, with one shape, one single shape, I weld them together, and 3 have now become 1. Now, the thing to remember about welding, you can't unweld. So when I go to slice, I can put them back together. When I attach, I can detach. When I group, I can ungroup. When you weld those, it's like, think of it like you're using super glue and you're gluing it together. So you can't unweld. So sometimes if I were at this stage and I wasn't sure 100% that I wanted to weld those pieces together, I would highlight my layers, I would duplicate them, and then go back and weld the duplicated layers. So my originals stay intact until I know for sure that's what I wanted to do. So now the third action item is called attach. And what attach does is it holds the shapes together on the canvas. So when layers are attached, you can edit the multiple layers as one for things like color and size. And attach takes all of your selected layers together, a score line, a cut line, a draw line, and it holds that place on the mat so that when you send it to the cutter, it will cut in exactly the position it was on your mat. And I'll walk through how that works. So this, for example, I have these 3 different images. I have a coffee mug, I have the word junkie, and I have the word pumpkin. And these are all 3 different image layers. So you can see I've got 3 different images. There are 3 different colors. Well, what I really want to do is cut out a coffee mug with pumpkin junkie on the wrap. So I've positioned them the way I want them. I've sized them to the size I'd like them to be, and I've changed the color, indicating I'm going to cut them on one piece of vinyl. You can see there's still 3 different layers. And when I send that over to my maker to cut it, it changes the position of my images. And the reason it does that, Cricut knows how frugal we all are as crafters, and they want to maximize the vinyl or the material that you're using by positioning the images in the most effective way to cut using the minimum amount of material. I know that's a lot of words, kind of a tongue twister. Okay, so that's what it would look like if I sent it over to my cutter without attaching it. So when I come back, I highlight all 3 layers and I select attach. And now you can see my detach is the icon that's down there because I've already attached these layers together. Now, why attach and not weld at this point? If you knew this was going to be how you wanted to do the image, you could go ahead and weld and it would send it to your machine as one, exactly how it is on my screen here. But I'm not sure, maybe I want to come back and change my words around or change my colors. I'm not 100% sure forever I want to keep it like this. So I'm just going to go ahead and attach it. And then when I send it over to my machine, it sends to my prepare mat like this. So when you've created something and you send it over to your maker and it's not in the position you expected it to be in, you can just hit cancel, go back, select the layers, and select attach. So keep in mind, the attach tool keeps your shapes in the same arrangement when you send the design to the mat to cut. The shapes are still separate pieces, but their layout is frozen. So you still have the 3 separate layers, but their position is frozen. When you weld, you're taking those different layers and you're marrying them together and saying, okay, these 3 layers, I now want to make them a single layer. So that's the difference between attach and weld. And it takes a while of doing it before it makes sense. So don't like worry if you're like, oh, I meant to attach and I weld or I meant to weld and I just attached. It's perfectly okay. It will all work out in the end. You'll get it. After a couple times, you'll be like, of course, I can't even believe I ever didn't know what the difference between attach and weld was. But it's just like everything, practice makes perfect. Okay, so then another image on another action item down here. Your 4th action icon is the contour item. Now, contour will hide or unhide individual lines and shapes within an image. So you have to have space within the image, cut lines within the image for the contour icon to activate. If you just have a solid circle, there is nothing to contour. But in this image here, all these little pieces are contourable. That might be a new word. So when you select contour, it comes into this second screen here, and you can see on the right side over here where you have all the little bitty shapes that are inside that image. And you can click on each shape and hide it. So if I wanted to take this cactus and turn the flower pot into a solid color, I could click on each individual curve here or click on the panel on the right and hide those cut lines so that when I go back to my image, I've removed all of the cut lines, and now this is what my image will cut like. So here's another example of contour. Using Cricut Access, you have a huge library of images to pull from, and an image may not be exactly what you want. So you may want to modify that image. So on this image, Darling, You're Beautiful, I loved the word darling. I loved that font and how it was written, and it was just so perfect. But I didn't need the You're Beautiful part of it. So I wanted to remove that portion of it. And so I pulled up the contour, and using the contour, I was able to hide these letters and the cutting lines inside. So you have to think of each contour piece like what is cut. It's a cut line. Contour is you're hiding cut lines. And there you go. I removed the You're Beautiful words from the image. So that's another way to use contour. Now, the last and final action icon on your layers panel is flatten. And this is a great tool to use, especially if you're making stickers or you want to print something out and then cut it. So what flatten does, it combines many layers into a single print then cut layer. So this image here on the left, I have it open in my layers panel here, and each color is an individual cut piece. So you would cut it out of vinyl or iron on and then marry it all back together on your shirt or your notebook or whatever you're making. But instead, what if you wanted to print this out and turn it into a sticker? You would need to flatten that image. So you would take all those different layers and merge them down into a single layer that is then ready to go to your printer. So you would highlight, so here I've got this one here, she's selected. So I've selected Body Positive Babe, and then I click flatten in my action icon, and it flattens. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. I've added a offset to this image here. So you can see that bottom line, I've added a white offset, and I'm going to flatten these all together so that I can print it out and then come back and cut just the outside of the image. If you don't flatten and you send it to print, it will literally try and cut every single line when you bring it back to your printer. So you flatten it, and then you only have now one layer that tells you to print it and then cut it. So then you could send it to your printer and be ready to cut it. So the flattened image is all ready to go, and the next step is to send it to the prepare screen, and you can see it's added this black line here. This is the registration border. So it will, after you've printed it, so you literally send it to your printer, and it will print out that sheet, and then you come back and put that sheet on your mat, and when you feed it into your machine to cut, the machine will find these registration lines here, and it will know exactly where to cut around an image. So we're not going to be doing a lot of print then cut today. We're not doing any print then cut today. I know we get a lot of questions on this, so keep your eyes open. That's another next level of classes. But when I mentioned, when you're making stickers or when you want to cut outside of an image, I added an offset to it. So what an offset is an extra layer on the outside or the inside of an image. And it's great to add dimension. It adds the layer proportionately around your shape. So when you select a shape, say for example, a circle or an image, whatever solid shape you have selected, you then want to go to your edit bar at the top here and select offset. And another window will come up, and it will show you where your offset will be. So for this one, it automatically defaults to a 0.25 offset. So my original circle is this gray circle. This blue line is the offset, and that's where another shape will come. So this is the offset has so many uses. It's really great if you're making titles for things or cards, or you want to outline something and give it more dimension. So when you hit apply, the offset adds an entire another shape to your layers panel. So you had the original circle. I did a 1/4 inch offset on that circle, and now I have another layer here for the offset. An offset, remember, offset can go on the outside of a shape or on the inside of the shape. And we actually, when we go live, we'll be doing more with offset. So another interesting part about your canvas and bringing it to the next level of understanding are these operations. And when you open up your canvas, you want to select which type of machine you're sending your image to cut. Whether you're using an Explorer, a Joy, a Maker, you always want to select your machine, because when you select your machine, the operations that machine can do are available for you. So if you have an Explorer, these are the operations that are available. So you can do a basic cut. You can draw using a pen or the foil tool or a score line, and you have the ability to print, then cut on your Explorer. If you've selected, I'm going into a little bit more detail. If you've selected a Maker, you have a lot more options. So you can cut a wavy line, you can cut a perforated line. Your drawing tools, you can use the deboss and the engrave tool. You can use the scoring tool, the foil pen, and just regular pens, and then print, then cut. So those are the different operations. And if you're using a Cricut Joy, you now have the foil option on the Cricut Joy too. And lastly, in the operations section here, you see this little box, and the box next to your type of cut will allow you to change the color of your material. Now, you also can see that the operation here should match the operation in your layer. So in your layers panel, if this is a cut file, it'll say basic cut. If it's a print then cut, it would say print then cut here. Okay, and then working a little bit more with text. The text, when you add text onto your canvas, your text box shows up like this. And as you type in your text, it shows up bigger. So this is your text. This is actually where you edit. You type in what you're going to be adding to your canvas, and then it will show up on your canvas based on the font you have selected. There's your edit bar up here, and it has the font you're using, what style the font is, and your edit functions over here of being able to move your letter spacing, your line spacing, aligning your letters, curving your letters is all right on your edit bar. Now the styles, some fonts have a lot of different styles and some fonts only have one style. It depends on the type of font you're using. This font that I've picked up here, Three Birds Life's a Party font, has all these different types of fonts that all these different types of styles I can create with one font. From the regular style here, which if you notice in my layers panel, I have 2 layers. So it will cut the word and then a background or shadow for each letter. And then it has a bold type of font, a bold style, an italic style, a bold italic, and a writing style. So some fonts, like I said, only have one option of style, and other fonts have multiple options of style. It varies based on the font. Now, when you're searching for a font, there are multiple ways to search for a font. So you can either search for fonts that you have on your system that you either have uploaded or they came with your device. You have access to all those different fonts. You have Cricut fonts. If you're a Cricut Access member, that you have over 500 different fonts to choose from. And you have this checkbox here that says only current fonts. So what a current font is, let me see if that's my next screen. Okay, so when you use a current font, what that means is it's a script type of font where the placing of the letters is overlapping. So you can see here this word daisy, the A and the I are overlapping right here. So this is a current font. And let me go back and tell you which font. Okay, might be in a future font. Oh, here it is. In your layers panel, it tells me I use the Cloud 9 font for this. And as I typed it out, the letters automatically come out overlapping. And if I want to cut this name out as like one sticker, one layer, I need to select this box and then select the weld icon down here. So I would use my layers panel, I would select it, and then I would weld it together. And when you weld it together, you remove these cut lines between the letters, and then you turn it into one solid letter here. One solid word. Okay, now that was a lot of stuff. And I know we went through it pretty quickly. I hope you guys are excited. We are going to make something similar to this. So Suzette, you've been able to watch the chat.
When it comes to the fonts, do they have to purchase the fonts when they download them?
So if they're Cricut Access members, the fonts are included in Cricut Access. If they're not Cricut Access members, they're more of an a la carte. They can purchase fonts as you go along, or you can use fonts that you've uploaded or are on your system. Like there's a font I use all the time. My family's like, we're going to put that on your tombstone because you use it on. It's called Lobster. And I found the font, I downloaded it, I put it in my files. And so now I have it in my system and I can use it in Microsoft Word or, PowerPoint.
Okay.
I can also then use it in Design Space.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's good to know. So we went through a lot. I know your minds are trying to grasp it all. But when we talked about attaching or grouping images, what's the difference and how would we know which one to use?
So when you attach images, you're freezing them in the exact place that they are on your canvas. So it translates to your prepare mat in that exact same position. So you're holding them together. When you group layers, you're basically taking a folder and going, I want this in there, this in there, this in there, this in there. And it puts it all into a folder, but it doesn't freeze their position on the canvas when it goes to the prepare screen. So it will, when you send grouped layers to the screen, it will maximize your cutting space. Okay, so before I start working on our project, just to clarify what I want to go in and clarify offset for you all. So let me jump in and do that. I'm going to go ahead and start my Cricut Design Space. Now, if for some reason, I know let me start my new canvas. Okay, so that should be, you guys all see my canvas now. When Cricut rolled out offset, it was in beta version. So it didn't go to everybody right away. It sort of trickled out and they were able to work out any extra kinks as it went along. So if for some reason, if you're on a desktop or a laptop and it's not showing, offset is not showing up, you may need to update your Cricut Design Space. So you want to be on, I'm on version 6.11.108. So you want to make sure that you're updated on the latest version of Design Space. Now, when I'm going to go to images and I use Cricut Access. I use Cricut Access images all the time, and then I modify them a little bit for myself. So for this example, I want to find those images I had of the body positivity. These are new images that were recently added to Design Space. And guys, every day there's so many fun new images that are added. So this is just the image that comes in, and you can see all these different cut lines are here. If I were to send this to my cutter, it would cut each individual color out. But let's say you wanted to outline it for making a sticker. So I'll highlight all the layers and I'll click offset, and then I'll click apply. And now that offset put an outline layer around the image. And you can see all the little holes in the image on the offset. So if I were to send this to my cutter, it would cut these lines here. And I don't want that to happen. So I'll select the layer, do contour, and I will hide all the contour lines within that cut. So now it leaves me with a solid line. I will turn that into white because I don't want to print it. So I'll turn it to white, and then I will grab all the layers and I will, sorry, let me just grab that layer. No, I won't let me, oh, because you can't see it. Sorry. I'm going to grab that layer and the offset and flatten that. And now that is one layer that will print and then only cut around the edge of the image. So that's one way to use offset. Now onto our project with another way to use offset. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to build in some shapes. So I'm going to go to my projects. So I have a finished version handy for me. So I've gone into my projects. I'm going to customize this image so it'll come onto my canvas. It's thinking, there we go. Okay, so this is going to be our finished project. And I'm putting this here so we can all kind of take a peek and reference back to it. And I'm going to slide it over here. Okay, now if you haven't taken the 101 class, I'm not going to go, I'm going to try not to go back too much. So if some of this is a little bit, you're like, how did she do that? We did go over a lot of these in the 101 class. So feel free to pop into that when you can. So to make this outline shape here, we're going to use a circle shape and a rectangle shape here. So I need to insert both a circle and a rectangle onto my canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and select a circle shape and a square shape. Now, just for, I always, as I'm learning something, guys, I like to sort of make it obvious what is different. So I'm going to go ahead and grab like some bright colors here. So I can make it a little bit easier for you to see what I'm doing. You do not need to grab the colors. So the first thing we're going to do is create a circle, the outline of the circle here. Now, this would be easy if you're on a desktop or laptop. You're going to go up to your offset, and we're going to change the offset size to a negative 0.13 so that my circle then is inside, my offset is inside my circle. So when I select apply, I have another shape right here. So I have the black shape is on top of the yellow shape. When I select those two shapes together and I select slice, now I have the three shapes. So I have the black shape, I have the outline shape, and then I have the circle shape here. So you see how this is going to become this shape here? All right, I'll do it again using your desktop version on the square, and then I'll show you how to do it on a tablet. So I select the square shape, I select the offset icon and it automatically saves my last size. And actually, before I do that, sorry, I want to make sure I have my square the right size. So my square, I actually want to be 4.25, unlock my proportion, and make my height 2.5. So I added a square image. I resized my square image to a rectangle by unlocking the proportions and using the edit bar to edit the square. Now I would go to my offset. The offset saves your measurement from last time, which is important because if you're trying to merge in two shapes, you want your lines between the two shapes to be the same width. So then I just select apply, and it applies that smaller rectangle in the center of my original rectangle. And I will select both layers. To select both layers, you can either go to the layers panel, select one layer, hold down your shift key, select the other layer, or you can click off onto a white space on your canvas using your left mouse button, drag and drop around those two layers. And now I've selected those two layers and I go down and I select slice and it slices my layers apart like that. Okay, so now I would delete these. I don't need the square or the rectangle shapes. So I would go ahead and select these circles and delete those off of my canvas. So if you're on a desktop, oops, didn't mean to do that. If you're on a desktop or a laptop, practice with that for a minute, hold tight for me while I show you how to do it on a tablet device. So we're going to insert a shape, and you can do the same process on your desktop. The offset is just a little bit easier. Okay, and I'm going to resize my square here to be the right size, unlock my proportions, and I want it to be 4.25 by 2.5. And then my square, my circle, I'm going to change that size to a 2.5. So now I have both of my shapes are the right shape that I want them to be. And I'm just going to move around a little bit. Okay, so now what you need to do is if you want to duplicate the layer, so click on the layer, the square, select duplicate in your layers panel, and we're going to actually make this rectangle smaller. So we'll make it about a 1/2 inch smaller. And so your width will be 3.75. And we need to make this unproportioned. So your height, instead of being 4.25, I'm sorry, your height instead of being 2.5 is now 2. And then you want that to be in the center of your rectangle. Now, you can eyeball it and try and get it there perfectly, or you can select both layers, go to arrange, go to align, and hit the center icon there. And I'll do that again for the circle so you'll see it again. So now I have my two lines, my two shapes. They're aligned in the center. You select both layers and do slice again, and then delete the ones you don't need. Not that one. Delete this one. Okay, so let's follow the same steps on our circle. We first duplicate the circle. Now this time I'm duplicating right on the canvas by, actually, let's see. If you're on a tablet device, you want to go up here and duplicate your circle from here. And then you want to change your size to being 2 inches, so you're 1/2 inch smaller. Select both layers. What happened? lost a layer. There we go. Bring that guy back down here.
I was going to say, gotta love the undo button at that point.
I know, he's hiding. He keeps slipping behind the other one. So select both layers and hit the slice icon again. And now you have your layers the same way. So either method will work. Whichever method works for you, you get the same effect. And if you want smaller lines, you just make your shape a little bit bigger to get your smaller lines. So for me, I need to delete these lines. So I'm going to select these two layers and delete them. So I'm back with my original layers here. Now what we're going to do is we've done the slicing. And so we've sliced out the center of these images to make our rings. And now what we're going to do is align them. Now I did not give you the measurements here. Let me change that and make sure that doesn't change my squares, my shape. It does change my shape a little bit. So by that, let me show you what I mean. So when I had it in the bigger size of the circle, my line width was the same on the square as it was on the circle. As I shrink the circle down to change the size of the circle, it also changes the width of my line. So now my circle line is a hair fraction smaller than my square line. So for what we're trying to achieve over here, I'm going to delete this layer, bring back in a new circle and size my circle correctly the first time into 2.5 inches. I'll change my color and then I will do an offset on this using the negative 0.13, selecting both layers and slicing. That is a lot of slicing. I'm ready for a pie. Okay, so now I've got my layers correct and I'm just going to highlight the layer and delete both of those layers that I don't need. Then I will put my, so you're gonna put your circle, and if you notice, it may be hard to see, but you might see it on your screen, that inside every shape is the crosshairs, and that indicates the center of the shape. So you can use the center of your shape to align your shape, or if you wanna make sure you're exact, that you have them aligned, go ahead, take your circle and overlap it on your rectangle, select both layers, select arrange, I keep going to arrange, select align, and align center horizontal. And that will align the circle exactly in the center of the rectangle. So whatever layers you want to line up, you just select both layers. Then you go up to the align icon and however you want to line up your layers, it will line it up. So if, for example, I had this guy all the way over here, but I wanted him in the center of the rectangle, I would select both layers. I would say align, and then I would ask it to center horizontal, and it centers it like that. Okay, now if you're still with me, hopefully you guys are, we're going to take these two shapes and convert them into a single shape by using the slice and weld. So first, now they're overlapping, and I select the two shapes and I want to slice them. And what that does, I'm going to pull mine apart. Don't pull yours apart yet. What that does is it gives it 4 different pieces. So you have your square or rectangle, you have the pieces that were sliced out, and your circle slices, the pieces that were cut out. So the pieces that were overlapping are the pieces that were cut out. So I'm going to undo this so we can go back and I can walk through it again. See where they're overlapping? Right here. My circle line overlaps my rectangle line right here. So what I'm going to do is select both layers and I'll hit slice and now it slices into where it overlaps. But what I want to do is remove from my circle that bottom piece here. So to do that, I'm going to select the circle, and then I'll select the contour in the action. So if you're on a desktop, if you're on a tablet device, contour is down at the bottom here. We're going to select that piece of the circle and hide that so it doesn't cut. And then we'll do the same with the rectangle, hide this so it doesn't cut. And then I have my image, how I'd like it to be. And I will take all 4 layers. So I click outside, drag across all 4 layers. I have 4 layers in my layers panel selected. I will weld them together and they will become one layer. So when I weld, that orange and the green all become one layer right there. So I've now welded those together to make one layer. Okay, now we're going to set this aside and we will add the text. So I'll put this, where should I put him? I'm going to put him over here. We'll set that aside and we'll add text. So to add text, we're going to use the new kerning feature. And the word I chose was kind. You might want to put a child's name in here. You could, whatever you'd like to do, feel free. You don't have to do it like I've done it. If you want to follow along with me, it is easier to do it that way, but whatever you want to do. Now I've typed in kind and I'm going to my fonts and I'm looking for a font that will do the cursive design. Now I know you can scroll through and pick all kinds of fonts. You can just sort with your system fonts. You can sort with your Cricut fonts. I'm going to use a Cricut font called Cloud 9. Now, if you have Cricut Access, there's no charge for using this font. You will see a price down here, but there is no charge for using the font if it has the A next to it. If it's a font that has a price and doesn't have the A next to it, then there's a fee associated with it because that's a licensed font or a licensed image. So we're going to use the Cloud 9 and we're going to go ahead and do that one. And it will change my word kind. There we go. I'm going to enlarge my word so you guys can see how each individual letter is actually cut out. Is actually placed here together. But because of the kerning, it takes those cursive letters and merges it together. So now they're lined up together. So when you select a font that is not a kerned font, kerned, let me duplicate this layer. You don't have to do this. This is just for an example. If I take this design and I click off kern fonts and I pick up a font that is not a kern font, like Quirky is a script font, but it's not kerned. When I change it, it comes in like this. And so each letter has space in between, like a normal script font. Then I would have to go back and manually change the positioning of each letter, not like that, to give that same kerned look. So let me go change the color there and you'll see that these are individual letters that I have positioned close together. So when you use a kern font, the software does it for you. You can still do it yourself. So you don't have to only use those types of fonts. Now, on the font that you've kerned, if you send it over to your cutter like this, then it will do a cut line there between each letter. So what we want to do is weld those letters together. And we're going to weld it together like that. I think I can't undo that. Let me add my, there we go. I'm going to try a different font because I think I have another font that is a kern font That will give me that cute little heart called Love Spell. Let me change that there. There we go. That's the one I want to use, Love Spell. And I will go ahead and weld that together. So now I've welded that font together. And I will change that into a black font so it'll match my image. And I just want to place that inside my new little shape I made there. Okay, so now all we have left to do is add some extra images. You can use the contour function and just get the heart here and place the hearts up, or you can go to images, and we're going to go to some free images, and we're going to find the bee. So we have this, you can use any of these free images or and any image you want. Like if you would prefer to do a heart, you can certainly do a heart. We're going to insert that bee onto our canvas, and we'll put him onto here. Save the bees. And you just, I kind of eyeball them in there. If you want to be more exact, you certainly can. And then to center it onto, you might want to center it with your word. So select your image and the kind layer, and then align both of those center horizontally so they're aligned up and down that way. And then we'll add our heart shape, which just type in, go to images. You can go to the free this week and type in a heart, or literally you can do any image that you like, or anything you'd like in there. You can do like the little double hearts. I like those little triple hearts if I can find those again. Oh, where are they? Oh, you know what? I typed hearts. Let's try heart. There they are. So I had typed in the word hearts and their heart. So I'll insert that image. And we'll add that one. I'm going to resize it. And when I put it in, it sort of crowded out for me a little bit, the bee with the other image. So I wanted to flip it and flip it horizontal and position it in like this. And there we go. So then if I sent it over to my machine like it is now, with these three shapes individual, they would all, I'll show you what that would look like. So if we go to make it, it positions it so that it's in the most cost effective, material effective way. So you'll see that it positions them, it does not keep them lined up. So I want to keep those images, I want to freeze these three images on my mat so they will cut as one. So I select all three layers and I select attach. Now when I send it over, I'm going to hide this. Let's see. Now when I send it over to my cutter, it will cut it in the exact same position as I have it lined up on my canvas. Right there. So it's in the same position. All right, so now we are actually ready to send that over. You see, I have my two different colors. It will prompt me to cut both the black and the yellow. That should be yellow. I'm going to cut it out of yellow. It will prompt me to cut both of those layers and on different mats. So I do have my Maker 3 hooked up. I'm going to be using Smart Vinyl on the black part of it. And I'll be using a Smart Permanent Vinyl. Okay, and now I'm going to stop sharing my overhead, my screen, and go right to the overhead. All right, so I've got my vinyl here, and for this one, I'm going to be feeding it in without a mat. I'm using the new Smart Vinyl here. There we go, beautiful. So it's gonna pull it in, and then it will tell me I loaded my materials, and it will tell me it's ready to cut. So I go ahead and cut it. And while that's cutting, my yellow, I'll be using with a mat. So I'm going to go ahead and trim my yellow vinyl down to size. So I'll make that about 5 inches by 6 inches. Now I use my paper trimmer to cut my vinyl, but you can certainly use the grids on the back to get your vinyl cut. When you're using smart materials, they are 13 inches wide. So you do need to have a little bit bigger paper trimmer so you can cut your 13 inches wide. All right, so now that's cut that. Go ahead and unload it. And I can see it, it looks beautiful. It's right there for me. And I've got my standard grip mat here. I'm gonna go ahead and put my yellow, lining it across the top and down the bottom. And my machine is my software is prompting me to go ahead and select my material. So this one I'll be using I'll be using a mat. So I need to change that. Continue.
I know we have some different machines out there. So remember, she's kind of going through addressing all of you. So sometimes you have to make that change when you have more than one machine. So it's good to see us be able to walk through this together.
Yes. So I'm actually using the same machine, Suzette. I'm just using different types of vinyl. So I was using the smart vinyl, which doesn't use a mat. I can just put it right in the machine. And then I'm using the mat with the premium vinyl. So it all varies. Okay, so there we go. Now it's going to prepare the screen. Prepare my cut for me. And then on the side, I don't know if you can see, I am using my scissors and the grid lines on the back to cut my black out off of my smart vinyl here. So for a small piece like this, I would normally probably just use regular vinyl, not use my smart vinyl, but it's so yummy and it weeds out so nicely. I love using it. Okay, so this one's done. I'm going to undo that and bring it in there. Okay, so now the next step is the weeding. And while I'm weeding, Suzette, if you have some questions, I can give those a shot to answer.
Question about contouring. Can you contour the images in Cricut Access, and does it permanently change the image?
You can contour Cricut Access images on your canvas, and it does not permanently change the image in the image library. It changes the image for your project. And you can always bring back the images that the cut lines that you've hidden. It's just like the eyeball. So you can always bring those back in. So now I've weeded both pieces of my design here. And you can actually, if you wanted to, cut it out of both, cut the entire design out of the yellow and the entire design out of the black, and then mix and match them down the line. Now, what I'm going to do is layer the black onto the yellow so that I transfer it as one design like this. And I'm going to show you a little trick on how to do that. So let's start with the yellow and put that on a piece of transfer tape. And I'm going to my little Heidi stash of transfer tape here. Now I'm using regular transfer tape, not a strong grip transfer tape, just the regular transfer tape on this project because both of my vinyls are premium vinyls and I just need our standard transfer tape to do that. So what I'm going to do is grab my transfer tape and line that up along the top line of my vinyl. Let me see if I can bring my camera a little bit closer here. Is that a little better?
We can see you great. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll line this up here. And actually, you know what's even easier sometimes is to put your transfer tape down. Mine has some, it must be very staticky in my office. So I'm just going to line it up on the reverse. So if you have trouble seeing the lines, your transfer tape has lines and grids on it. And so it's super helpful when you're lining up your images. So I'm going to go ahead and line up my transfer tape using those lines and then pull back on my transfer tape and pull off the backing, the vinyl backing here on my transfer tape. Now here's the trick that I'm going to show you when you're layering vinyl. I have my kitchen parchment paper from Kirkland's, and I'm tearing off a little piece of this because I don't want to stick my layers together until I know it's going to line up. So what you can do is put your image down, put your parchment paper over that. So even if you wanted to put your B, put this on your blank and then grab your image, you could do that. Or you can just do it on your transfer paper here. So let me get my transfer tape down on my self-healing mat here, lining up my lines. So we go like this and line up the lines here. I know it's hard to see a bit, but I'm using the guidelines on the self-healing mat to line up this. Now you can just eyeball it and slide this under and pull it back and make sure you like the lineup of it. Or if you want to make sure of your lineup before doing it, you can use parchment paper and it allows you to move your image around a bit and see your lineup before actually putting it down. It's hard to do when I'm up a little bit higher. Sorry about that. We go like this. Okay. So we're going to line that up. Put this on there like that. So yep, that's how I want it to go. So I'm just going to pull that back a little bit. I'm making this look harder than it is by doing it this way. I'm going to end up doing it just my usual way as it is. All right, so let's just do that. Great. Okay, so there we are. So that lets you line it up a little bit easier using the parchment paper and not having to worry about it sticking together so closely as you're working on it. It's up to you, whatever method works for you. Honestly, the more you do it, the easier and easier it gets. So I just removed a little bit of my transfer tape, make it easier. And I'm going to peel back on the backing paper. If your image, to get your image off, go ahead and use your wedge and pull down on your wedge here like this. You can do the back of your image and the front of your image, and then just pull your pull your backing back. And as you're pulling it back, you sort of want to work it at an angle. Now, I will say the Smart Material backing is a bit thicker, but I find my Smart Material vinyl peels off easier than on other vinyl. I think it's a personal preference. So if your little piece peeks up and doesn't want to go down, go ahead and bend your paper back as you're going along. You can use a weeding tool if you need to, like if you're really having a hard time and it's not sticking, just grab your weeding tool, press your piece down like that, and boom, there you go. And then I use let me grab in my stabilizers here. My fancy system of stabilizing my image is using this, using my face cloth to stabilize my image. So I'll just go like this and bring my blank in like this. Now you can start in the middle and sort of do a taco fold and work your way across. You can start on the left and bring it right. I'll be using the bottom of my transfer sheet to line up my decal and do it as smoothly as possible to eliminate any and all air bubbles that I might get. So one thing is you can reuse your transfer tape, absolutely. I do find if I've been excessively rough with my transfer tape, I don't like to reuse it because it may stretch a smidgen bit, and so it makes it a little bit harder to line it back up. but I use my transfer tape as many times until it doesn't have stick on it. Now, once you've got your image on your blank, go ahead and press it down, use your wedge. I have cleaned my blank here before making it. So I'm working with a clean surface, and I'm using, if you use permanent vinyl, you can certainly wash it. I probably hand wash most of my items instead of machine washing them, putting them in the washing machine. So you can see right there, he didn't want to come off my transfer tape. If that were to cause a bubble or something, I would just not press it down super hard and come back with my weeding tool and sort of tuck under and work that down if I needed to. But I'm just going to keep rolling this down, sort of pressing on the vinyl as I go. And holding it as we go across. Now this jar, I'm going to fill up with Bit-O Honey candies. I don't know if you guys remember those, but that's my intention with this jar, is to fill it up with Bit-O Honeys. And there we go. And let me just I want to address the bubbling again, because it does happen when you're working on a project and it can be super frustrating. I've been there. I know those 2 a.m. why I want to go flat kind of things. A couple things is you can work on it in pieces. So using the parchment paper, I'm sorry that didn't show up better, but using the parchment paper and slowly folding back and exposing the vinyl as you go. If you're working with like a tapered type of material, a tapered blank like this, using cutting your transfer tape as you go. I have seen where people will heat it up with a hair dryer, sort of to manipulate their bubbles out that way. And honestly, like you just go with it. If you're a beginner and you're getting started and it has a couple bubbles, make sure you gift it to somebody who's craft worthy of gifts, and you know what I mean, who really won't care that it's got a bubble in it, who will just be so excited that you thought of them when you were crafting and you made this for them. The first couple of times, if you have some bubbles, don't worry, don't stress. Just keep working, keep practicing on different blanks and you'll be fine. And also I would suggest, don't do it in front of other people. Because my husband, I'm a closet crafter. My husband was helping with a project. We were making big signs and I was putting down all this vinyl and it kept bubbling and I was so frustrated. I was like, this isn't supposed to happen. And it just made it more that he didn't see me as like this smooth crafter I pretend to be.
Email that you'll want to remember is makewithus@cricut.com. You're going to have some more questions, and that's okay. We want to address those questions. So make sure you make a note of that when you get that email, makewithus@cricut.com. And thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today, and have a fabulous rest of your day.